Hi, this is Don McAllister and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. Back in episode 601, I covered various techniques of backing up your Mac, including a section on using my existing Synology NAS, or Network Attached Storage device, as a Time Machine destination. I mentioned in that episode that it might be an interesting exercise to take a look more closely at what a local NAS can do for you and explore some of the features of a dedicated NAS in your local environment. So this week I'm going to start from scratch and explore the features of a Synology Network Attached Storage device. In this first tutorial I'll be looking at choosing a NAS and selecting suitable drives, the initial setup and configuration, looking at some RAID options, and also looking at accessing your NAS via iOS. In the next tutorial I'll be taking a look at actually using some of the functionality and services available on a NAS, both on the Mac and iOS. As usual, I'm going to do this screencast completely independently of the vendor, and I've had no contact with Synology. There are a number of different NAS vendors such as Drobo, QNIP, WD and more, but I've settled on using a Synology NAS based on my research. As I want to start from first principles, rather than base the tutorial on my existing 8-bay Synology NAS, I thought it would be better to buy a brand new Synology box, one that is more in keeping with a typical home environment. The box I've chosen to base the tutorial upon is the DS216+II, which I purchased from Amazon.